And welcome back to another Kentucky Magazine right here on ICN6. Pat and I were talking about those social media things that we all use, the Twitter, the Facebook, the LinkedIn. For the very first time, Dave, I have to ask you, on the news today, I saw that they were using Facebook and Twitter to try to get people involved in helping to find the woman from Utah. A social thing that we all thought was a funny thing, Twitter. Do you Twitter? Oh, you know, it's kind of a joke. Now being taken very seriously and used to solve a crime.
Well, that's one of the things that's interesting about social media. You mentioned I'm heavily involved in all this stuff, and that's because as a business tool, I found it to be very, very powerful for me personally. But I think people are constantly inventing new ways to use it, and it really boils down to, you know, there's this huge new channel out there, whether it's Facebook or it's Twitter or it's LinkedIn, because those are really the three sort of major players out there. You know, you have people who are connecting with other people that they probably did not know in the real world. And now you have this huge channel, and particularly with Facebook, because it's so easy to share information, it makes it simple to do something like see an Amber Alert come along. When you were mentioning this, we talked about this off camera. I myself, for some of the local Amber Alerts that I've seen come through, have actually shared an Amber Alert before through Facebook. Wow. You know, you figure I've got almost 2,700 quote friends. I use that term loosely, right? Because I don't know the vast majority of these people on Facebook. But you figure if an Amber Alert comes out and I can share that, if even only a small percentage of those people see it, and obviously then probably an even smaller percentage share it, because it's so simple on Facebook to just hit the share button and push that on to their channel. You know, it can have an exponential explosion, or you hear the term, even though I hate this term, it's one of those goofy computer terms, make it go viral, right? I'm going to take something and make it go viral because suddenly you have either dozens or hundreds or thousands of people who can very quickly share information in an exponential kind of way. So it really is a very powerful technology.
I don't like that term because I think it's a negative term, make it go viral. That, I mean, to me, that's bad. Any kind of a virus, when, especially for a computer, you know, has a negative connotation.
Well, it really does. That's a good point, but you hear that term a lot in the sort of social media marketing circles. You know, the idea that like a virus, it spreads very rapidly is the sort of underlying concept of that. But that's an excellent point. It does have a negative connotation when you think of computers, because generally viruses and computers are something you don't want.
So what are the trends? What trends are we going to see in smartphones in 2010, David?
Well, I think you're going to see more people adopt them because of the things we've talked about. Like, you know, my phone here, it has a very high quality camera in it. You can shoot video with it. It plays music. It's got Windows Media Player on it. I bought a 16 gig micro SD card for it. So this thing has 16 gigabytes of memory in it. And I think about that for a second. You know, at one time, that was more memory than, like, you know, all the computers that NASA had. So I've got something like 2,000 songs on this phone. You know, I can plug it into my car and use it as a media player in the car. So there's all these different ways people can use this. There's been a move afoot. One of the founders of Twitter, and I'm not a Twitter fan. I think I've probably said this on the air before, and I don't think Twitter has a long-term future when you look at the adoption rate of people using Twitter versus like Facebook or LinkedIn. You know, there are many people predicting it's already peaked, and you can see a lot of people use it. They don't see a lot of value in it and quit. But one of the founders of Twitter is working on a device, and I've forgotten the name and I can't find it here this morning, but basically a way for you to plug in through the standard jack. If, you know, on the bottom of this phone has a regular size headphone jack. And they're working on a device that you as a merchant would be able to plug into a phone like this, because this is fully internet connected. I can get on Facebook, I can do online banking, anything that'll run right on this tiny little screen. And that's one of the problems with these in terms, I mentioned before, the business application idea. Doing anything really complex on a device of this size is not the most user-friendly experience. But they're working on a device where you as a merchant, let's say you're a Findlay Market merchant or something, right? And normally you'd have to go out and buy the credit card swipe machine and pay all these fees and so forth. Plugs into this, it's a little tiny mag card swiper, and you'd be able to run a credit card through it and do it over a phone. So literally you could go to like a flea market or a swap meet or something and take credit cards from a device like this. It's a pretty interesting concept. And some of the things that I think you're going to see are going to drive more adoption of these kind of devices, because people are finding more and more ways to use them. Pat, you'd asked about applications or apps. Short, you know, dorks like me have used this term for years. You know, an app is nothing more than an application, a software application or program designed to run on one of these mobile devices. You know, Apple has sort of popularized this idea of apps because they have this app store where literally there are hundreds of thousands of different apps you can download to your phone to do different stuff. Like, you know, it may be grocery list, you know, put your grocery list in the phone. One of the things that makes these so handy, you know, again, I'm sort of an old school guy. I don't want to type on this little thing. I don't really want to do a lot of work on this. I mostly use it to have the information handy when I need it. but the ability to sync. So I can take this home, right, or to the office,
Yep.
or even over the internet. You know, I do all the work on my full-size computer, and then this thing just syncs up with it and exchanges the information. So I think as more and more apps get out there where you can, you know, synchronize information from a full-blown device to your portable, it's just going to drive that much more adoption of these things because the price keeps coming down. This, because I renewed the contract with Verizon, was only $150.
Yeah.
Not that much more than a regular mobile phone, but way, way more powerful and really, you know, not quite as capable as this computer, but real close to it.
What's going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? What smartphone should a parent who's never ever looked into this for their kid, or you know, a YP out there who's thinking about it for the first time?
I can only imagine the sort of drubbing I will take over these comments on Facebook later today, because of course I've been promoting that I'm going to be on the show this morning. You know, I'm not a big Apple fan personally. Droid, I'm still sort of, you know, jury's out on that.
Yeah, I just heard about that for the first time.
I would say probably either BlackBerry or Windows Mobile if you're going to be working in a business environment where you're going to be using some kind of business applications. You know, a lot of the stuff still out there for the Apple iPhone. Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of apps, but the apps are usually not supported. They're not business apps. The IT people and companies don't have a way to work with that stuff yet. Now, that's not to say they won't. Obviously, if the iPhone growth continues the way that it has, eventually they'll be forced to accept it. But I think right now, you know, still the biggest pool of phones out there are BlackBerry. So, and the BlackBerry is very simple to use. I don't know anyone that's ever had a BlackBerry that didn't like it because they made the interface so simple with their little thumb wheel thing. You know, you can burn through that real quick. Did you have a BlackBerry?
Yes,
before?
I did. It was very functional, very good. Hey, Dave, what about the Kindle? Is that a hot product?
E-readers, I think, are coming on, and again, I think you're going to see the blurring between an e-reader is just an electronic book reader, right?
Yeah.
Amazon's got their Kindle. Apple's about to jump in the market. Rumor is Google's going to get in this mix too, because of course they're kind of like Microsoft, leave no stone unturned, right? I've never used a Kindle. I have tried to read a book on the phone, and again, the problem for me is when you look at the tiny little screen here, it's just very difficult to work with that. The e-readers are maybe 70% larger than this. You know, it's not quite the size of a computer, but it's not exactly the size of a smartphone. It's somewhere in between. So it is easier to work with. It's more the size of a small book. I personally can't really see myself getting into that, but I know there's a lot of buzz around it. I saw that Amazon sold more books electronically this year in electronic format than they did actual print books for the first time. So I think there's definitely a movement in that direction. One of the things that's really great about those kind of devices is, let's say you're doing research on something, right?
Yeah, good point.
The ability to search through the text quickly as opposed to having to go to like an index in a book and read through it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of pluses. Again, for me, I would rather have some kind of e-reader software on my computer, where if I were going to read it online, you know, I could use the computer.
Gosh,
that's probably gonna happen.
opticians everywhere are rejoicing. I mean, you'd be cross-eyed by the time you got done reading it on this. Just fascinating. It is always fascinating when you come, Dave. Don't make it so long before you come back, okay?
Well, thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Will all your friends at Facebook be happy that this interview is over and you haven't embarrassed yourself?
Now that I've said bad things about Twitter and Apple, I can assure you I will get a drubbing. Because those people tend to be very fanatical about their things. So,
and we'll all be back after this.